came to the smaller room today because I thought that the crowd would be a little bit smaller, but we're just so pleased that so many of you did come to show the importance of our topic. If you recall last week when we ended up, I got up in front of live TV and admitted that I had forgotten my script, left it back on the table, so I just did kind of the end. So today I walked down here and didn't have my script either, but Keith brought it to me, so I'm going to have to read this so it's official as far as the paper is concerned. I'm pleased today to welcome each of you to the 6th session of our 7-part symposium on the future of teacher education. Today's program is being videotaped to be shared with others interested in this vital topic. We are grateful to the members of the Teacher Education Council who are sponsoring the symposium, really in an effort to gather information on this most important topic. Teacher education is at the top of our agenda because we realize that today's teachers are facing very different challenges than those who entered the field just a few years ago. Very proud that almost 50 of you in a variety of academic fields are here again as part of your commitment to educate yourself on this important topic. We're seeking information and ideas on the national, state, and local levels because it's important to be able for us to make informed decisions. Since we are not on live TV and they can edit out all my mistakes, we'll try to be a little bit more formal today. In that spirit, I would like each of our panelists to introduce themselves when they make their presentations. We're going to have 3 presentations today. When they finish, we'll let them say what they would like to say. And then all of them, I think, are probably looking more to an interaction among us. So Ms. Pennington said that she would like to lead off, so we're going to start with Ms. Pennington.
Thank you, President Elam. Before I start with my official remarks, I'd like to say that we need to pass around a registration sheet because on a Good Friday afternoon to have this many people out, I definitely think that's a reason for merit pay. Most of you know me as Helen Pennington, member of the Board of Regents, middle school principal. I am middle school principal of Morgan County. We have approximately 535 students and 80 faculty and staff. Now last year I was very gratified to get an assistant principal. Prior to becoming a middle school principal, I was a teacher. I worked as a consultant with the Department of Education for a number of years in food service, finance, and accreditation. I am a graduate of Berea College and Morehead State University. And I am very honored to be a part of Morehead State University, both as a graduate and a current student. I am auditing a class at this time on exploring the internet. Wonderful teacher, Mrs. Godsey. And we're having a lot of fun in that class and learning a lot, and we're supposed to be designing our own web page when that's over with. But all of us must continue to learn, as well as our students. Good teaching should be judged by how much learning has occurred, or the quality of our students' work. It's not how much I know, it's how much you know, but it's how much our students know and confirm that they know that determines if good teaching has occurred. I'd like to express appreciation to Morehead State University, President England, for having the foresight to start these poems. This is something that has been needed in Kentucky, indeed probably many, many places. Certainly I know that for the last 10 or 12 years. And it was just a golden opportunity that you all seized the moment on this and went forward with it. And I'm honored to be a part of it with you. Many of my remarks today will be based on what matters most, Teaching for America's Future, a report of the National Commission on Teaching and America's Future, 1996. And the rest will be from my own experience. I'd like to share with you 2 or 3 vignettes of what good teachers have meant to me. And I want to say, and I think we all know this, being a teacher is the most important profession in America. It really is. Each and every one of us have to pass through and learn with good teachers in order to be in any profession in our country. So I'd like to share with you a lady named Thelma Hatfield that I had as a language arts teacher. And my background you probably don't know too much about, and I won't go into detail. But I was the first one in my family to go through the 8th grade. We got our first vehicle and indoor plumbing and so on when I was in college. Thelma Hatfield was the type of teacher who related to students as individuals. She did not see them as groups, or maybe they have transferred in and they're transferring out and going on, transient students whose families were following the work of coal mines or loggers, which my father did. But she saw us as individuals, and so she steered me to reading the book, A Girl of the Limberlost by Jean Stratton Porter. And that really has a message. That young woman, too, as a student, was struggling and finding a way to attend school. So Thelma Hatfield knew that because she related to me as an individual. Estelle Ellis, a home economics teacher. One of the things they do is visit the students' homes. Now when she found out, and I know you'll probably smile at this because people say to their children now, I had to walk X number of miles to get the school bus, and it was all downhill or whatever. But when she came to visit me and she found out that indeed I did cross 3 creeks without a bridge to get to the school bus, that made a difference to her. Then when I had a school activity that I really needed to attend, I could spend the night with her. She cared. And Mary Lou Barbaro, who was a guidance counselor, she's still living, she helped me fill out the forms for Berea College. I had never heard of Berea College. I was in a small town in West Virginia. So, here again, she cared and saw what she thought would be potential. And then Mary Stewart. When I started my first year as principal, Mary was my librarian. She was my mentor, and in some ways still is. So, in my opinion, these people exemplify the characteristics of good teachers. And what are they? They know their subjects well, and they continue to learn all the time. They are totally immersed in what they're doing. They're excited about what they're teaching. They have high standards for themselves as well as their students. They will not accept things that aren't of high standard and high quality. And I think we have lost some of that, our students have, and sometimes we have too. Because it's easier to say, perhaps, well, they made a 0 on this or whatever, without saying, this is not up to my standard. I will help you do it over if it is your 3rd or 4th rough draft of the paper that you're writing. And teachers also strive to relate and meet their needs of the students as individuals. And I'm going to come back a little bit later to that when we talk a little bit about diversity. Now I'd like to turn my attention to some concerns in present-day teacher education. Currently, as I told you, I'm a principal in middle school. 2 times in rewards, once in decline. Scores are not nearly what they should be. Not nearly what they should be, especially in the area of science. Our middle school is organized around the middle school concept, in that we have grades 6, 7, and 8, and we have 2 families in each grade. And the students have 4 teachers for their core subjects, and of course others for their co-curricular. That way the students have to relate to fewer people, and hopefully those teachers can build relationships with them so that they don't fall through the cracks, and they can bring them along, and they can meet with the parents for a conference. All 4 of those core teachers together with the parent. And this is something I wanted to do many years ago. Finally, still did not have the staffing exactly where it should be, but I'd like to compliment my current superintendent in that he was willing to take a step forward, and my staff was willing to take a step forward and try this, even though we did not have the number of staff we should have had to do this. Sometimes you must go forward. Always we must go forward. They have individual planning and a common planning, as well as, of course, their lunch period throughout the day for these core teachers and families, so that they can, of course, work together on student problems, student discipline, lesson plans, unit planning, interdisciplinary planning, any number of things that needs to be done. And probably most importantly, rewarding those students who have done well, who've been on the honor roll, who haven't had any type of discipline or whatever, but rewarding for those high standards. Looking now at some concerns faced by school principals in orienting and developing teachers to the field. Time is a big one. As we all know, it is for all of us. But it's just something that we have to manage to do. Of course, one of the most important, I guess the most important thing, is being an instructional leader. And I want to do so much better on that. Get into more classes, at least X number per week, because it makes the students see that it's important to me. As a matter of fact, I have an assignment from a class that I was participating in that's due after spring break. Now that science-based councils are in existence, principals cannot shun the responsibility, and indeed they should welcome it, because historically, sometimes past, not always, but on occasion, we would have a teacher sent to us. There was not a position open. You would change the whole schedule 2 weeks before school started in order to fit that person in. That's history, thank goodness. Now, the council and the principal interview the teachers, and we had better take that seriously. We had better not let politics interfere with that. This is my philosophy. I don't care where you're from, what color you are, male or female. I only want the best teacher for that classroom. So the decision then is easy. Just making sure that's the best teacher for that classroom. Now, doesn't matter if you live in the county or out of county. Principals have responsibility to continue to learn. The demands on the time is tremendous. Usually maybe 6:30 in the morning to around 5 of a day, with a night activity possibly 9 or 9:30. So one of the things that I've continued to be involved in, and I think that all principals in state should be, is the Kentucky Leadership Academy. What's going on right now that we can help our teachers do better and work with them and our students, and that keeps us up. They have the responsibility of ensuring that student teachers are only assigned to the best supervising teachers. And if this can't be achieved in the school, then they should not take those student teachers. A few years ago, 4 years ago, I did not have a single science major on my staff. And when I was called, I said, I'm sorry. I have no science teachers on my staff. Therefore, I cannot take a science, a student as a student teacher in that area. And that's the type of decisions that we have to make and should make. That's the only ethical decision to have made at that time. This same criteria applies to intern teachers. They should only be placed with the best proven teachers in that school. And there's some other variables there that come into play. I'm not saying that takes away from that because, you know, I think they're paid maybe $1,000 and et cetera, et cetera. But they should only be placed with the best. And here again, that is on the principal's shoulders. And what I mean by the best teachers, those who have students with high success rates based on student work. Based on student work. That's the end product. This would have cut me off this present time, and the next one I have to suggest, back those years ago. Principals should only be entering the principalship program after 5 years of public experience. And I stress public. Extend the internship program so that beginning teachers continue a formal mentoring relationship at school and with the university for their first 4 years. And I will try to find some money in the budget to do this because I've already talked to the teachers on board, and I don't know how we could work this out with the university at the present time, but we must do this. 1 year is not enough. They are barely getting acclimated to the classroom. So this must change. So for the first 4 years are tenure. Now, I said most of this would be my own opinion, and truly it is. So this next comment certainly is. That is, if we continue with the tenure program as we know it, I strongly recommend that tenure be reviewed for consideration of renewal every 5 years for all local school district personnel, and I would really include university personnel. Because if we are in the process in doing the things that we need to be doing, that's our tenure. 2, concerning supporting career-long professional development of all teachers. Must have large changes in this. We are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on professional development, which is crucial, But the problem is determining what professional development is needed, and are we taking the correct professional development? Are we implementing it, and so on? And I'll get into that a little bit more. Schools are living laboratories. They are, on a daily basis. They are living laboratories. Our public schools, districts, and regional universities, and I hope Morehead State will be the first one, must collaborate together to form professional development schools. And I haven't thought this through far enough to think, is this a place? Is this on existing university campus, out in the public school districts, or just how we can do that? But we can do that together, which will bring together on an ongoing basis teachers, new and experienced, crucial on the experience as well as the new. Professors, principals, deans, superintendents, university presidents, all to work to improve teaching and learning for adults and students. This will bring better students to Morehead State University. It will put better teachers and better principals in our schools as practitioners on a daily basis. To do this, we will need to look at doing some of our research and teaching in the public school, which I have always advocated. Actually looking at earning some advanced degrees in this manner. Teacher networks and study groups will evolve from this, from the districts and the universities. These groups will review, develop lesson plans, review and analyze student work, instructional strategies, do videos of classrooms. What is a good classroom setting? What's happening there? Work together to see who are our best teachers. Analyze those. Use those in teaching and use those with the people that's being videoed. We must become open about this as far as learning together. Assessment methods. Reflection and analysis by groups of teachers in the same content areas. One of the things I really must try to do, if at all possible, in scheduling, and as you know, that's a horrendous job. I would like to be able to schedule the individual planning for my core teachers so that all math teachers have the same planning time, all social studies, all language arts, all science, so that they can work together during that individual planning time on a frequent basis. And here again, stressing new and experienced teachers. School-university partnerships will provide forums for study groups and school-based research on immediate concerns. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more too. The research needs to be done by university teachers and public school teachers. Perhaps we need to take a different approach to teaching such classes as, and this is not the only thing, research methods, reading, curriculum development, as well as other university classes. Actually using it practical in the field, not just talking about it. Analysis of the videotapes of actual classroom teaching to determine a basis for ongoing professional development. And that's just one avenue. At the present time, we're just starting some academic audits, such as those done by the Appalachian Rural Systemic Initiative, or RC, in the areas of math and science. Teachers are observed during class, interviewed, and most importantly, student work is reviewed and students are interviewed. Curriculum and 19 instructional approaches are reviewed. If lecture is the teacher's major instructional approach, we all have a fertile field for improvement, because we all know if that's the case, we are only addressing the verbal linguistics part of our learning styles. And by the way, if anyone knows of someone who is ready to do academic audits of social studies at the middle school level, please talk to me after the session. So we complete the activities, the research, and so on. That determines our professional development that's needed for individual people. Teachers participate in the professional development, and in many cases, right with the university person that's been working with them. They follow up on this to determine the implementation of the strategies from the professional development. Analyze student work to see if there's been improvement, and to determine the future action that professional development is to take. Looking at funding for at least 10 days a year, so that it could come together as a week or two during the summer, perhaps. Because we all know at the end of the day, we're exhausted. Certainly public school teachers are exhausted, and you are too, probably, I'm sure. Looking at using sabbaticals for public school teachers, university teachers, whereby teachers work or volunteer and do research in the area of their teaching. This is crucial. If we're in the writing arena, what better place than perhaps with a newspaper, or if we're in industrial arts, what better place than with industry to see what is happening in present day and to keep abreast of that and to bring it back with us to make us better. Concerns in developing a cadre of teachers with a diverse background of culture and experiences. In our area of the country, in the immediate area, when we talk about cultural diversity, at the present time, sometimes it's quite difficult. And we need to continue to work on that. So I'm going to take a little bit different approach with that. Certainly we have socioeconomic cultural diversity in the area in which we live, to a large degree. So how do we treat that? I think we have to be very careful that we don't refer to that as that particular group. Group is a very dangerous word in dealing with students. Again, we need to be looking at them and their potential as individuals and trying to take them as far, much further than we think probably that sometimes that they can go. Because how does someone look at you or look at me and decide what I can do without presenting a challenge and helping me to meet it and see if I can meet it? So with that, I think we need to look at high expectations for all. And when I read in the paper, I forget what division it was from the State Department, that they were making some comment that we should lower standards, I was livid. Never should we lower standards. We need to help our students to meet the standards. So if we lower the standards, what do we have? Utilizing instructional strategies and assessment strategies that address multiple intelligences. Back to the lecture, whatever. Addressing all of those intelligences because we all learn differently and the same. Utilizing Bloom's and Williams' taxonomies of action verbs and student behaviors at their highest levels of assessment. Now, if we're doing simply true and false, completion, fill in the blanks, they're easy to grade. They sure are. Those open responses are harder to grade. You know, we're going to have to get our students to be able to analyze and evaluate instead of list and define. And I direct a lot of that comment to the public schools because I know the internet class I'm taking right now, it certainly isn't that type of assessment. We will be doing many, many different things at the higher level of Bloom's taxonomy. How to work with post-secondary education to both strengthen teacher preparation, curriculum, and internship programs. Reevaluate the criteria for entering the teaching profession. Field experience during each year of the college preparation for those students. It doesn't have to be extensive as a freshman, but they need to realize, is this really what I want to do? The internship, mentoring program after the internship year. University is still a partner, and here again we'll have to look at funding and how we get at that, but it can be done. Continue for 4 years with that. All teachers, principals, and university teachers to be involved in the professional development school. You know, we've had offerings in professional development. I have a catalog right now. Professional development for the summer and the coming year. And there's some good things in there that we all need. But we're going to have to get that right now on research and reflection of what we're doing in the classroom as to what we really need. And then go through the steps of putting in and implementing it, seeing if that really worked, going back and fine-tuning that. And that's where it can come into play, of changing around some of the things that we have taught in a traditional method of coming to the university and taking a class, but how in the world do I fit that into what I'm doing to make my students better students? I believe that all teachers should be and must be trained and expected to use the writing process and open up to questions. University and public teachers. Because that's crucial. That's one of the ways we communicate. Verbally, I'm communicating today, I hope, with you. I have also written some things down. And again, I'd like to say, it's not what we know, but what our students know and can demonstrate that determines the quality of teaching. And also, I am very, very pleased to be a part of this initiative, and I look forward to working as one small part of it to help this become the immediate future for us.
They drew straws.
I won.
I think it would be a little strange to be a teacher because I look around and I have a
A lot of strange people.
really intelligent audience, and I'm more intimidated by you all than I am by a classroom of 30, 15, and 16-year-olds who don't want to be there. So sometimes I'm not real sure where my mind is. I think the future for teaching is very promising. I think it's a very exciting time to be a teacher, although some people don't hear that. There's more dialogue now. The Symposium is an excellent start. I've been on the Teacher Education Committee for a couple of years now, and I was ready to say maybe I need to move on. It's just one more day I have to get a sub for and be out of my classroom. And then Dr. Eaglin came and met with the committee and talked about some changes that he wanted to initiate in teacher preparation. It's like, okay, maybe I need to stay for a little bit longer because it's starting to get interesting now. Maybe some things will happen. I teach high school science primarily. Well, this year I have a real interesting class load. I have three different sections of chemistry. I have an environmental science class and an astronomy class. So every year I get something a little bit different, and the preparation gets a little more, but it makes it interesting. There are more opportunities for teachers now than there were in the past. Professional development, although it's not what it should be, it's really what you make of it, and a lot of teachers don't have that attitude towards it. But there's a much more diverse range of professional development. There's more things than I can choose to go to. And I've gone to so many good ones lately, it's hard to put a finger on what was the best one or the most life-changing or had the most impact on what I do in the classroom. There's chances for sabbaticals, there's chances for collaboration, there's opportunities to do things that we could never do in the past, and I think that makes it exciting. I left the classroom for a couple years and worked with the State Department as a statewide science writing resource teacher. And it was very, very interesting. Every teacher needs to leave the classroom and have some time to think and reflect on what's out there. Think a little more about theory again and get away from reality, and then come back to reality and get a better feel for what will work, what's reasonable to do. So it was a real pleasant experience. The travel was horrendous, and that's why I came back to the classroom. The travel was really bad, but it was a wonderful experience that I've been able to draw upon all the time I've been in the classroom since then. I think accountability is wonderful. It's time, and most of my colleagues would shoot me for saying that. But if you're not accountable, then you get complacent. It's good just to be mediocre. But accountability as far as portfolios go, with internship, with testing, and looking at student performance. I mean, that's what judges me as a teacher. How are my students performing? And some days that's really scary. And there are other factors that get scary. And I think there's more professionalism in teaching now than there used to be. I'm currently secretary of Kentucky Science Teachers Association, and we've seen a tremendous growth in our organization with just the last 10 years. A tremendous increase in attendance at our conferences. There's better media coverage. You know, I think we get more media now than we used to get, and makes more people aware of problems, concerns, issues, and increases that accountability again. So I think it's an exciting time, and I think it's even more exciting if you teach math or science. Math teachers, they had it easy because everybody knew you needed math. You know, you had to have math to survive. There wasn't anything anyone could think of that you weren't going to need math skills to do. Now, science was a different story. Only this elite group of people needed science. Not everybody needed science. And now things are starting to change, and it's been a little slow. Science teachers are probably most guilty of perpetuating that particular problem. I've had a battle in my district this past year over our science curriculum. We had 3 science credits required before the state requirement came about, so we thought we were ahead of the game and moving along. Well, I kept battling my administrators over what science should be taught. And our principal thought it was best to bring in other people to decide the science curriculum. Science teachers didn't think that was best, but we had to go along with what he said. And it turned out to be good because it increased the dialogue and increased some understanding. And what we ended up with is this battle between not everybody needs chemistry. Not everybody needs physics. And you would say, I don't think you understand, because they're thinking of what they had when they were in the classroom. They're thinking of the experiences that they had. And I'm guilty of it myself. In the first few years teaching, I prepared those students for college. I felt that was my job, get those kids ready for college. Now, in my district, the 75 to 70% of students who weren't going to college, I don't know what I was preparing them for. I really don't. You know, but I had an epiphany, and this is kind of a strange epiphany to come from a newspaper advertisement. But some of you may have seen this. It was in the newspaper a few years ago, and it was an ad from the Partnership for Reform Initiatives. And there was a picture of this little boy, and he was standing beside a jet. And he had on this man-sized coveralls and a wrench in his hand, and the caption said, "Someday, Tommy will be maintaining the plane you fly." And I saw my classroom full of Tommies. And it makes you just really wonder. And then the concern becomes for a lot of science teachers, especially at the elementary level, where's the fine line between content and your pedagogy? Well, Tommy's got to get ready to maintain this plane. And if you don't have the background to get Tommy ready, when's he going to get it? It won't all come from technical school. It won't all come from college. He has to begin to grasp those understandings when he's first there in school. And so it gets even scarier when you start to think of it from that perspective. Carl Sagan once said that we've arranged a global civilization in which most crucial elements profoundly depend on science and technology. We've also arranged things so that almost no one understands science and technology. And that's been a problem in science education for a long time. It's been for the elite. And now with science education standards, and they're not perfect, but it's a framework, it's a start. We start to realize scientific literacy for all. It's really changed what I do in my classroom, how I do it, and why I do it. Because I'm thinking about all those Tommies that are sitting there and what I need to get them ready for. So the shift in focus has really been a positive for science education. It gives us more to stand, because now we're reaching everybody, and not just that elite few that might go on, that might become the rocket scientist, or might go on to cure cancer or win a Nobel Prize. I think the public and parents are now more receptive to that because they see the influence of science and technology in their lives more. You can't avoid it. So they realize that their own children are going to have a little stronger background in that, so maybe they can explain something to them, I don't know. But they just need some help with that. Science remains a thorn in administrators' side. We're expensive. If you're going to have a good program, it costs money. We've got these safety issues you have to contend with. We've got facility concerns you have to contend with. We're always asking for stuff. Administrators need to understand where science education's coming from. They need to understand what a good program looks like. They need to understand science is for everybody. It's not just for that elite few. I've constantly battled our ex-guidance counselor on encouraging students to take chemistry or physics, because she came from the school where I don't need it, I don't ever use it in my everyday life, to trying to understand how it's taught now to make it more relevant, to make it so that you think about, as a citizen, I want to make decisions based on these ideas. I'm going to make voting decisions. I'm going to figure out solutions to problems in business that I need a science background to understand. So it is for everybody. It's not for that elite few. Often if you tell people you teach, you get a real sympathetic response. I don't know how you can do that with those kids every day. And our best kept secret is the kids are wonderful. We have very few really problem kids. I know when I worked for the State Department for 2 years, I mostly worked with adults. I like the kids better. A lot easier to work with. I don't think a lot of people understand that. If you tell them you teach chemistry or you teach calculus, they're like, oh, I never did like that very well, or I never did understand that, or I don't know why you need to know anything like that. People are intimidated by it, and that's part of the science community's problem is we need to overcome those kinds of barriers to make it reasonable for everybody. So I guess my first major point as far as teacher preparation goes is we've got to find some kind of combination between what we teach and how it's taught. Elementary teachers have hands over fist over secondary teachers on pedagogy, classroom management. Secondary teachers are often accused of you teach content, and elementary teachers teach kids. And there needs to be a happy blend there. There needs to be a mix. It's hard to teach something you don't know much about. And elementary teachers tend to be intimidated by math. They tend to be intimidated by science because it's not their strong point, but kids are their strong point. And so we need to find this mix. As a secondary teacher, I need to have a better understanding of the students and what works and what doesn't work for those students. So I think as for a teacher preparation program, that's the first place to find what is a good mix of that. How do we balance content versus the process that you go about delivering that content? I got to hear Stephen Jay Gould week before last at NSTA in Boston, and he was speaking on science education in general, and he's much wittier than I am, but the gist of his is we beat the love of science out of kids in school. Most people have a natural love of science. Most people are naturally scientists, but we just kind of beat it out of them. Science in most schools tends to be textbook driven. I know my own son, I have 3 children, and 2 of them are in college now, but one that's still in, he's just a freshman in high school. He's kind of my guinea pig. I watch his response to things, because he's your pretty typical teenager. But he's very interested in things, but it's just gradually getting beat out of him. His science classes have been read the textbook, you do the vocabulary words one day, you do the questions at the end the next day, and then on Friday you're going to have a test over. Every now and then they throw in a video, and that's the extent of it. The excuse would be facilities. You don't have to have a lab room to do labs. I have a wonderful room. I have a really nice, most people are very jealous of my classroom. I have a really nice facility. But you don't have to have that kind of facility to do hands-on science, to do activities that reinforce those concepts that a lot of people will use as an excuse. We need to help teachers overcome that. You can do lots of things outside or sitting at your desk. It doesn't involve expensive equipment or lots of sinks and gas burners and things like that. So there's a lot of room for just thinking about how we go about approaching that. And we don't want to continue to beat the love of science out of people, because most people naturally are interested in things. I'm not trying to lambaste elementary teachers as far as what they do, because I could never teach elementary school. I know that about myself. I don't have the patience to teach elementary children. But I think that working with a lot of elementary teachers the past few years and being involved in a lot of professional development across the state, elementary teachers' biggest concern is their lack of content knowledge. They're scared of it. A few years ago, I think the PRISM initiative that the state was involved in that was probably had the greatest impact on elementary math and science teachers in the state. And if you talk to those science teachers who went through one of those PRISM summer workshops, it empowered them. And the focus was on content and how do you deliver it? How do you organize instruction to be successful? I think we need to look at some of those successful programs and not let them fall by the wayside. Because those math teachers and those science teachers who went through that are still out there. And I think they'd be willing to share what they learned and how that experience was different from what they got in a teacher preparation program. I think it was kind of sad commentary on my own lack of skills that it wasn't until about 10 years ago when I went through the writing workshop here at Moorhead that I finally started thinking about how you teach. I didn't have any problem with the content I taught. I loved it. That's why I'm in science. I absolutely love what I teach. And that's probably the biggest plus in my classroom. The students know that. But I never really thought about how do I teach this to the students. And it was a writing workshop that helped me think more carefully about what I did and not so much about what I taught. And secondary teachers need a lot of help with that. We're so content grounded. And we have to stay content grounded, especially in science. It changes so often. It's hard just to keep up when something new happens every day. It's hard to try to stay abreast of what the current trends are. But we need help with that. We need to think about what's the best way to get these concepts across to those Tommies that are sitting in our classroom. I probably shouldn't admit this, but I didn't complete my rank 1. I got about halfway through, and I have a master's in biology, and my graduate work was probably the highlight of my educational career. My mentor's sitting here, Dr. McGrain. I always have him up on a pedestal because he made it so interesting and he made it very challenging. And when I had to go back and try to complete my rank 1, the courses weren't relevant. It was like, I can't make myself sit through this. I don't have the time to give the stuff that I can't go back and transfer into my classroom. It's just, it didn't make any difference. And so now it's like, if I wait this out, surely they'll have some changes. And I'll get going with my rank 1. So now I think that I'm going to try for national board certification. And I think one of the pluses for that is the reflective part about it. Because one way to get better as a teacher is to reflect on what worked and what didn't work. You know, how did I not reach those kids? Why did they fail? Why did so many of them fail this test? Or why aren't they understanding this particular idea? The fact that now you can come up with your own individual plan to get professional development. I'm one of those gluttons for punishment who's always taken as much stuff in the summer as I can take. You know, I might have 60 hours in the summer of different things I went to. It was just for me. I know it transferred to my students, but it wouldn't count towards continuing ed. It wouldn't count towards a rank change. I probably have 3 or 4 degrees now if I counted up all the PD that I've gone to. But I picked something that was relevant for me. And so now we're finally getting an opportunity to do that. In the past, sitting through those courses, it just wasn't going to help because I suffered through halfway, and it just wasn't worth my time. So I think a teacher ed program has to provide this balance of rigorous content because the standards for our students are so high. It's really scary for teachers when you look at the testing that the students are required to take and you look at what a proficient means, what it means to be proficient in science or proficient in math or proficient in anything. And it's scary to think about getting all kids to that level. And it's going to take rigorous content, a strong base of knowledge to do that, as well as a big bag of tricks to pull it out of those kids. All the different ways that you can help them learn. I've had several students the past couple weeks. It's been kind of interesting. I've had several former students come in to do observations because they're in the teacher ed program here at Moorhead. So this was not a scientific poll or anything like that. It's not a good random sample. But I did informally interview a lot of those students just about their teacher ed experiences, knowing that this symposium was coming up. And the things that I found from talking to about 5 different students is that they're still being taught to plan for instruction, but they're not being taught to plan for learning. They fill out, she said, one of my students said, oh, they grade them really hard. Our lesson plans are graded really hard. And I said, well, what do your lesson plans consist of? Well, it's objective, materials, activities, and it's like, you're not planning on developing a unit, you're not thinking about teaching with the end in mind, or what are those essential questions that if your kids can do nothing else when you finish, this is what you want? No. So there's a big concern. We know that several of our newest teachers within our own building are just so textbook bound because they've not been taught to use national standards or to use core content to help them organize their lessons and then think about how students are going to learn these. That's scary. We were hoping they could come help us because we're still struggling with it. If you've been in the classroom for a while, it's a brand new thing for a veteran teacher, and they're still not being taught that. The students said that their observational hours had been increased. Well, we all know that the only way you learn to teach is to do it. And to sit there and watch someone for more hours, for some students it might be beneficial. Because one student said it had been very interesting for her to watch a variety of teaching styles. And so parts of it are good, but to up the observational and not increase the doing doesn't make much sense to me. Because it's when you finally are doing it, then the pieces start to fall into place. So I think one of the things we have to focus on is how can we get those students more actively involved in doing those lessons and not just watching them. It seems that teacher ed programs have been reactive and not proactive. Okay, this is a response to reform initiatives. This is a response to state testing, or this is a response to the media. Instead of being visionaries and thinking down the road, what are we going to need to do? And I think technology is an example of that. The technology skills of the students who have come out of the teacher ed program in the last few years have just been very varied. And it mainly depended upon the students' own personal interests. Some were just kind of techno-whizzes to begin with and weren't intimidated and were very proficient at doing those things on their own. Other students were more clueless than those of us who have been in the classroom for 19 years and are just trying to figure out how to do all these things. My students, they think that I was still around when the earth was cooling because when I tell them in the chemistry class in high school, we did our work on slide rules. And the first chemistry class I took at college level, computers were just starting, and we had to key punch in our responses. And they're like, key punch in a response? What's a key punch? They don't even understand the lingo. They're very used to technology, but it's something I'm still trying to deal with. And we were hoping that our teachers coming out could help us deal with it, but many of them are as intimidated or not as skilled as those of us who have been in the classroom for a while. So I think that that's been a big concern. I read an article just this past week in Technology and Learning, and it said that basically the same thing, that across the country, and they did poll a much more scientific poll of teacher ed programs, and it was very varied there as to what technology requirements were of teacher ed programs. Some were very stringent and were on the cutting edge, and some didn't even have it as a component, or, yeah, it would be really nice if somebody incorporated that into other lessons, but no, we don't stress that. And they also made a point of saying that of the 55 up-and-coming jobs for the future, 46 of them relied heavily on technology skills. So it's imperative as a teacher that I have those skills because my students are going to have them. And I have to make them feel comfortable with it and see a variety of ways to use that. So those have been some concerns just talking to students who are currently in a teacher ed program. I'm not going to go down the certification route because that's a major battle right now in the scientific community. It seems kind of unusual to me that all of the research suggests that the stronger your content knowledge is, the better your students perform. Ms. Pennington said she didn't have anyone in her middle school who had a science degree, and she didn't feel comfortable placing a science student under them. Middle schools are under a lot of scrutiny now because of their use of teachers. No one really has a degree in certain areas in some schools, seems especially crucial in math and science. It's the same thing for elementary school. Science scores are lower at the elementary and middle school levels, and I guess there's a strong correlation between that and teachers teaching out of field, or those teachers who have a strong science or math background, and how well their students perform. Yet certification's been changed to weaken that. It scares me to death to think that I could teach physics. They got me teaching astronomy now, and that's really working me to death. But it scares me to death to think that I could teach AP physics. I had physics in college, but I would never want to torture those kids with that. I don't have the depth of understanding it takes. And I know that I'm never going to teach my students the self-phys that I learned under Dr. McGrain. They don't need that at their level. And I know that I'm never going to teach them the organic chemistry that I had. But I have to have that understanding to know how to teach what I do. I have to have that depth of knowledge to get those key concepts across and to see all of those different connections. So by weakening certification so that Mr. Back superintendents can fill those positions a little more easily and have somebody more certified is a big problem. It's not going to help the situation in the long run, but it will make it easier to put people in a building and say, yes, our teachers are certified. Maybe that's where professional development can come in. Maybe there's other answers than changing certification. But I think we need to start looking at those now before we have another crisis situation and everybody's all up in arms about poor test scores or the students aren't doing well in this. Another battle is attracting gifted students to science and math teaching. And I guess I'll use myself as an example, and this sounds kind of boastful, I don't intend for it to be. I graduated magna cum laude. I was the outstanding biology student from this university, and I worked hard, but I loved it. And when I told my professors that I was going to go into teaching, they didn't discourage me. And probably if Dr. McGrain had just said, have you thought about maybe doing this? It probably would have really swayed my thinking because I had such great respect for him. But he didn't do that. He said, oh, that's wonderful. We need good students in teaching. I have a hard time telling my good students that. I have a real hard time telling my good students that. Because I know that they can go out with the same degree that I've got and make double and triple the salary starting out. You know, I'll never hope to see that kind of money, and not everybody's money driven, and those of us in this room certainly aren't, or we wouldn't be here. But there is a reality to this, you know, and it's really hard to encourage somebody to go into it when they're not going to see the money that they can make doing other things. We had chemists come from Ashland Oil 3 years ago to a career day that we had, and she was in the classroom. She was really wonderful with the kids and told them a lot about it. And she was just shocked at the amount of work was involved in teaching. I didn't have to tell her anything. The questions my kids asked, and then the things they would say to her, she realized how much time you had to put in to teaching and how much after hours. And the kids asked her, like, well, how much work do you have to do when you go home? And she was like, work when I go home? You know, I do my time here at school. Well, what's your salary? And the students soon realized she got paid a whole lot more than Miss Johnson did, but she didn't have to put in the hours that Miss Johnson was putting in at school. And it makes an impact. So it's really hard to encourage them when there's that monetary reward just isn't there to go in teaching. I think maybe to counter that, we need to do a better job of publicizing ourselves, of telling them money isn't everything. You really do have to like what you do. And that's something that's been really hard for my own children to learn. First they were, well, they're going to go for the big bucks. Look at mom and dad. They've worked hard all their lives, but you know, we're not up there when it comes to the money. But mom and dad are happy. Mom and dad like what they do, and that makes a difference. And so I think we need to sell those intangibles better. It's a real thrill to work with kids, and I think that they would find that out. Most of the students are very receptive. You know, they really, some of them don't want to learn everything you want to teach them so much, but they're nice people, and they're going to try, and they're going to work for you if they know that you're there for them as well. There's a lot of intangibles to that. Another thing that we've noticed about our newer teachers coming in is they're not so willing to give up their time. They're not so willing to sponsor clubs or go on trips, go to PDs on weekends or in the summer, and many of them have young families. You know, and those of us who have grown children, it's a little bit easier to leave than it was earlier on. But I drug my kids with me to a lot of things when they were little. And so a lot of them aren't willing to do that. They're like, I want a life. We know we have this tremendous turnover in teachers now. Most teachers don't last 3 years. A lot of teachers leave the profession after 3 years because most of them will tell you, I want a life besides teaching. And I want to do something besides just teach. So teaching isn't for everyone. You know, there's a lot of commitment involved to that. And that's one of the ways you're successful, when your students realize that you have that commitment. But we need to publicize those intangibles to students as one of the ways to offset, well, you may not going to make as much money as that starting chemical engineer, but these are some of the things that you are going to get benefits from. And I sincerely believe in the power of the individual. I mean, I think that's why most of us are in teaching, because we really believe that we can make a difference. And I don't think we've done a good job of selling that to younger people and some of the teacher candidates, that kind of role that they're going to have in students' lives. So I think we need to be more active in getting those teachers involved in things. Instead of so much observational time, let them come over and work with us on after-school projects. With extended school services, there's a lot of exciting things happening in buildings right now after school that those teachers could, teacher candidates could benefit from. Let them come and go to different professional development with us in the summer and get course credit for that and work with teachers. Let them come and help us plan lessons, not watch lessons. A lot of people in the building would be more than glad to work with teachers on that, because it's always wonderful to have somebody else to bounce ideas off of, a new approach to it or a new idea. Let them realize that there's more than just the money, but I think working with the students would sell them on a lot of those deficits when it comes to the dollar signs that are there. One of the reasons I didn't think about teaching when I first was in college was not only didn't pay very much, it really wasn't a very glamorous profession. You know, you didn't think about teachers as having this real exciting career. I really wanted to be a doctor, and that sounded a whole lot more exciting. But I guarantee there's no more challenging profession than being a teacher. Day-to-day challenges, I think it rivals that of a doctor, rivals that of a corporate leader. All the decisions that you have to make, all the impact that you have, just the day-to-day work involved in teaching, I think rivals that. It may not be glamorous, but it's very challenging, and we need to tell that to these gifted kids. They want a challenge. Some of them are going to be bored to tears in the corporate world. Some of them are going to be bored to tears being an attorney, but they'll never be bored in the classroom, because the challenges change every day and with every class that you have. I think that there are a lot of ways that we could have those students more involved, and we need to look at that. And I think they would be willing to do that. It'd be a whole lot more interesting for them than sitting there watching the teacher. It'd be more interesting if they were doing with the students and planning with that teacher on making things more effective. So I think I've covered most of my key points. I think it's a very exciting time to be a teacher. I think there's lots of different approaches we can take, and I think Moorhead's always been truly wonderful to help teachers out. I have never been turned down when I called anyone from Moorhead and say, could you help us out on this, or could you hook me up with somebody? And I think that's a tremendous asset, because I don't think that happens at every university. And so we've already got part of that bridge there, and then I think many teachers who graduate from this institution will gladly work with the professors here, or are calling you all the time and say, well, what do you think about this, or could you help me with that, or do you know someone? Now I think we just need to work more carefully with those teacher candidates. Let them come to our rooms. We'll be more than glad to work with them if they can sometimes stand the chaos that goes on day to day. But I think it's just a very exciting time. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ronnie Back. I'm Superintendent Russell Independent Schools. Yes, I'm a Moorhead graduate. Shucks, I got 3 degrees from here. My wife has 2 degrees from here. I have 2 daughters who've graduated from here. One of those are working on a graduate degree now. And my baby is a 20-year-old sophomore with you all. So to say to you that Moorhead is my university of choice would certainly be an understatement. I love this campus. I love this town. I love the things that happen in this school, or the way it's impacted my life. And I came from out of state to be here, and just nobody's run me off yet. I've been an administrator at Russell Independent Schools for 26 years. I know, I don't look old enough for that, but I've been an administrator for 26 years. I've been a superintendent for the last 6 years. And as has been said to you already, I can't imagine a more exciting time to be in the education profession, in the education business, than what it has been the last few years and what I anticipate it being the next several years. As I said, I'm very proud of this university. I PR for this school wherever I go. I PR for this school with our young people, our student body, and I think that you'll see if you look at the records there, you have more Russell School students coming here than you've had in many years. And part of that is because we all work together, try to do the right thing, and we public relate that to other people. I love the traditions you have here, but most of all, I love the service you provide to this region where I've chosen to make a home and raise a family and have a great stake in how things go on. When I think of this university and I think of the personnel here, and I see some of you all over here when I came to campus about 100 years ago to be a student, and it's exciting for me to have grown from the super green kid that I was when I came to a colleague with some of you all and share some of the life experiences and some of the educational experiences that I've shared with you. So I appreciate that, and I can't tell you how much of my heart belongs to you and how much of it belongs here. You have kind people, you have caring people, you're very professional, very listening, and most of all, you're very helping and supporting this region and the people here. And like I said, I try to public relate that very much, as much as possible. When Dr. Eaglin called me and talked to me about coming here and being here, of course, you have to understand that this is intimidating to me, and I'm a little nervous and a little scared about being here. Y'all have been, the college professors for so many years, and I consider it a privilege to come and share some thoughts with you. And I want you to understand that some of the thoughts I share with you are meant to be as positive and as constructive as possible. When I said to Dr. Eaglin, oh, it's a good idea. Sure, if you want me to come, I'll come over and talk to him. Maybe I'd be glad to. That'd be a privilege. Why don't you tell me what kind of a tack you want me to take so I can kind of be supportive and fit in with where you need it? He said, no, I don't want you to come and be what I want you to be here. He said, I want you to be frank and open with us. Matter of fact, he said, my words to you are, Ronnie, I want you to be brutally frank with us if you have to. I want you to talk to us about what, from your chair, what you see as the product we're producing for educators. I want you to talk to us about what's right about what we're doing. And he said, particularly, I want you to tell us what you see that needs to be done differently. So I thought, gosh, that's a pretty tough topic, to be brutally frank. So I hope to be frank but not brutal. What I tried to do is talk to a lot of people who are products of this university, as well as talking to a lot of people in the education profession who deal with products but didn't come from here. So what I hope to do is share some thoughts with you from those people, some impressions with you from those people as well as myself about the kind of people you're turning out, what we can see them as, and I understand that can vary from person to person sometimes. I'm going to give you some generalities, and then hope that through our conversations after we get done and afterward and on down the road, that some of the thoughts we can share with each other make an impact and make a difference. As I talked with the leadership team in the Russell Independent Schools, some KEDC leadership people, I said several students, lots of people. I just took each category and said, okay, the primary people coming out, what's good about it? What are they doing right? What's Moorhead doing right? And I commend this university, in particular President Eaglin and some of those that I've chatted with you about this initiative. It's difficult sometimes for each of us to look at ourselves critically and say, here I am, put the spotlight on me now, put the heat on me and tell me what I'm doing right and wrong. That's tough. That's tough. And even tougher to take it from there and say, now what can I change? So I appreciate the initiative, and like I said, I'm so pleased to be a part of it because of how much of my heart is here with you. I told coming down the sidewalk that with all the people in my family that have graduated, I bought 2 dorms and the administration building. And I'm not done. But he said, okay, your next task is to renovate those 2 dorms. I suspect it will happen. So I took each category, as I said, and tried to find out what our people saw as the strengths and weaknesses of what you're giving to us. When I talk about primary teachers, I'm talking about K1, 2, 3, and preschool. They tell me that, generally speaking, those people are the most knowledgeable of all, and I say all the groups. I'm talking about primary, middle and high school, and special ed. They tell me those people are the most knowledgeable about their content, their general job, and what they have to do. They also tell me, and some recent graduates, that they need more whole class experience. We have Ashland Community College connected to UK in Ashland school system right next door to us. When their kids who are education declared majors are freshmen, they go to classes with checklists, observation lists, assignments, volunteer work, and they go. They find out right away whether they're going to be an education major or whether they don't. One of the complaints that I have is that sometimes we graduate people in this profession, and what do? They get out, like was said, they teach a year or two and find out, oh, this is not for me, but they got 4 or 4.5 years of blood, sweat, and tears, guts, and money invested, and then they say, well, what am I going to do now? They need to know before they get that far whether they're material for you or for us. And we need to be working together. Our partnerships, and I'll talk about that in a minute, our partnerships need to help each of us start determining some of those things, and they can quit wasting their time, and your time, and my time, and our kids' time. They need more classroom management experience. I don't have all the answers for you all the time, but if a teacher comes to my public schools, and I say to you that we have high standard, high expectations, you hear that term, we truly think we practice it, have for years, and we're not going to let it change. If they can't control their kids, if they don't know how to take care of that, it doesn't matter what they're teaching. It doesn't matter. They have to have classroom management skills to get there. So the methodology classes you teach and you work with need to address that. Now, I know that you do that because I went through some of it here myself. But the times are a-changing, as you know. We can't, as Miss Bessie used to say, we can't heist them and fire them like we used to. Set fire to them. No, we have to deal with them in another manner, deal with the parents in another manner, deal with the media in another manner. We have to be able to discipline and control and interest and entertain and 100 other things professionally in a quality way. So classroom management is very, very important for you to give to the people. One of the things that each of the groups kept sharing with me is that they all must have more special ed knowledge from you. We're doing more collaboration. The regular classroom teachers are in on more IEPs, individual education plans, more ARCs, admissions release committees, more information about due process. It's a terribly tough legal question, and special ed and 504 is going to kill all of us before it's over with if we don't watch it. And assessment knowledge. The middle and high school people, I'm told that they have excellent subject matter knowledge from me. It's doing a super job in that. They're really, really coming out with that and ready to learn in that. They do need more writing portfolio experience. I'm talking about the student portfolios. They need to know more about that. Now that's a difficult skill and task for most of us, but we are getting more emphasis in that than we've ever had in our lives. And I'm one of those people like some of you all. I'm from the old school, but I'm still here. Yeah. So my ability to adapt and change must be right at the forefront. It must be. And one of the things we have as a philosophy of our people when we graduate, and we know that when we finish with a kid in high school, we start them in kindergarten, and we start planning, and we know then what we're going to try to do, skill-wise, every step of the way. If the elementary can give the intermediate school a good product, they take them and run with them from there. And then if they do the right job, they'll give them to the middle school ready to go. And if they do the right job, the high school can take them as freshmen and zoom from there. So the time we get done with them, if we've done what we need to do all the way through, they're in good shape when we get done. But we need to be planned, and we need to be organized, and we need to be ready to do all those things. I said your middle and high school people come out with excellent subject matter material. Knowledge. Once again, they need writing portfolio stuff. In the special ed props that head up there, when I talk to people, they need IEP knowledge, they need ARC knowledge, they need due process knowledge, they need assessment knowledge. It's entering their classrooms more and more. We're doing more collaboration with special ed kids incorporated into the regular classroom that have to be. You realize now the state says we've got to give all kids, special ed kids too, algebra and geometry just to get out of high school? Don't water it down. Don't water it down. Don't weaken it up. All have to have it. That's a toughie at best, but we got to follow the rules. So that's where we're headed. Once again, middle and high school, always you can give more methodology, teaching methodology, and more classroom management. That's something that we need to have an emphasis on, and some of that's difficult to get without going to the classroom. You all know that what you teach in the classroom and what they experience on the front line sometimes is too far different. And most of what we do as educators, you really don't know what it's all about till you go walk the walk. Carry the load. Stand up under it. You learn so much that way, as you did with your work. The special education graduates that you have are absolutely top-notch, excellent on collaboration and what's going on in the classroom that way. They're doing a super job and coming out with super knowledge in that way. They always need more IEP, more ARC, more due process, more assessment information, things of that nature. One of the excuses that I hear, and it's probably a good reason, is that, well, the universities aren't teaching them much about IEPs because all the forms are different all across the state. So they can't just teach at this university about IEPs because the forms are different. True, the forms may be different, but the process is not. The information needed is not. The knowledge needed is not. We need for you to turn them out with some of that. It's difficult for us to take them from you thinking that they're ready to go and start training them all over again. Since Kira came into being in 1990, I say to you and mean almost as sincerely as I can mean it, our teachers have done enough PD to have doctorate degrees for all of them. We're PDing them to death. We're pulling from classrooms and punishing kids when we pull them out. We're pulling from classrooms more often. And we've got substitute teachers who work hard, who are very sincere, and they work their tails off to do a good job. People, it's not the same. It's not the same as that teacher who has that vision, has that knowledge, and know where you're starting and where you're going to try to wrap them up at the end of the year. If we can keep them in there, we're doing a service to kids. And we need them to be involved. We need them to be going and doing things. But it's punishing kids some. It's punishing kids. I'm not worried about those kinds of things. Another thing that is such a strong thing from here, and it may be someone else may have a different impression, but my two daughters and the other people that we have, your computer literacy work is super. They're coming to us knowing, the ones that I've experienced, coming to us knowing which buttons to push and what to do and how to get in. They know some program work, and they've had a variety of exposure in that regard. So the efforts you have, and that's a cutting edge effort. And of course, you never stay caught up with the material and with the equipment and the software in those regards, but it's an expensive item and it's a cutting edge item. But the graduates we're getting with the communication skills they have with computers, it's super. You're doing a super job with that, and we appreciate that. We do have some thoughts that I think that we all need to work on solving. One of the things I would say to you is that we're ready, and I think many of you are ready, to form some collaborations and some partnerships between this university and this region. Now, some of that work has already begun, and some of y'all are in on some things, and some of y'all are not. But I think some things need to evolve and help there and come along. I think the future of this profession, and indeed the very foundation of this university, is going to depend on some of those things. And we need to have the attitude of being lifelong learners ourselves and evolving and developing. I know that as a school superintendent, and yes, you're right, some days I say, why in the world would anybody want to do that? And other days it's marvelous and exciting, and most times it is, of course. But as a school superintendent, if I'm not able to adapt and change, I won't survive in this business. And if you're not able to adapt and change, you're not going to give us people that can survive in this business. And we desperately need that from you. They have to be able to adapt and change. I started to say a while ago, we try to teach young people, we know that when we turn them out, their lifetime, at least there'll be 5 technological job changes for them, things that don't exist now. That's the same thing for you. They're only 4 years older when you turn them out than when we turned them out. So the most important thing we can do for them, besides giving them all the technical knowledge we know how, we also have to teach them how to be thinkers and apply what they know and adapt to change and keep growing. We have to give them an attitude of being a lifelong learner, being able to adapt and change and grow. So we hope that you do the same kinds of things there and work on those. Something that I don't know how you solve, I don't have an answer for it. If we could separate the GPA, grade, and credit concept with your students from the retained learning that they're supposed to be picking up to come to us, it'd be a marvelous blessing. I was, my kids are, you were. I'm more concerned when I'm taking these college classes about the GPA, the credit, because sometimes my scholarships depend on those things, whether I can go or not go, my standing, my ability to apply later on and look good or not look good, depends on that grade and credit. I'm more interested in that than I am absorbing and sponging the information you give me to carry it next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. Now, I don't know how you separate that and make them, retain the learning and forget the grades and credits, because those things are too important. You can't separate it very easily, but I think it's something we need to try to address together. And like I said, I don't have an answer for it, but I think it needs to be looked into. I think we have another responsibility, and part of what I'm doing here today is we need to let you know what we need so you can train them that direction. Somebody gets done with you and they're ready to go be an educator for us, whatever field it may be, they got 27 years to work. They don't know it all right then. You know they don't know it all right then. But we need to tell you where we're headed. There was alluded to a minute ago about having a vision. I know you can't outguess where we're headed, but some of it you can figure out. And we're the same way. We can't outguess where we're headed 5, 10, 20 years from now. But some of it we can figure out because it's pretty plain on the wall. But we need to have that vision. We need to be working together. But I think part of the responsibility lies with us in communicating with you the things we need, the things we have to have from them. Because I know that you want to give them what they have to be prepared. Their success is your success. And you're not in this to be a failure. You're not in this to look bad. You're in it to succeed. We want you to succeed. We want you to send people who are prepared and ready to go. We'll take them from there and work with you through the years on other things with them. So we need to be communicating with you what we need from you and what they need to be prepared for. One of the things I would suggest is earlier exposure, as I alluded to a while ago, to the classroom, to the real classroom. I'm not just talking about observations. I'm not talking about having up there in Ginger Hall and bringing a busload of kids and giving each one of them one kid to go out in the hall and talk to. That's well and good, but we need to do more. They need to know what it's like to be in the classroom. They need to know what it's like to look at 24 little faces expecting them to be the guru of all, or to be challenged, or whatever it may be. Along the same lines, I would share with you that I'd like for you to be able to weed them out at a younger basis. A concept I would share with you, and I've seen it happen many times. Not necessarily in my school district, but I associate with a lot of people in a lot of places, do a lot of work. When a student has spent 4.5 years with you, been successful, so to speak, they're still in the program. And they come to us for student teaching, we think they're the biggest dud ever was. You think we're going to flunk them? Not very likely. Don't misunderstand, I'm not saying we shouldn't, but it's not very likely we're going to flunk them and get them out of the profession because they've already proven themselves to you for 4.5 years, they're still in it, and they're still hoping to be an educator. So we're going to perpetuate the myth and fool them some more and say, oh yeah, well, that's, you did pretty good. Now go get your certificate and apply somewhere, but not here. I don't know how to tell you to weed them out sooner, but when you know that they're not material to be educators like you and I are, do them a favor. Send them on to something else. Whatever they may be interested in. I don't know there. I don't have a good answer, but I know that we need to weed them out earlier and be frank with them, because if they get out and get in this business, they're not going to be happy all their lives. And if they're not happy in this business, people, they impact young people. And there isn't anything more important than the impact they have on young people. That's what we're all about. That's what we're all about. So the sooner they know, the better off they are, the better off you are, and the better off we are. Now, I'm not talking about something that's easy, I know that. I'm not talking something with a simple answer, I know that. But I think we need to be looking at it, and I think we need to work on it together. Something that I would like to spend some time talking with you about, and it's not, the time is not this evening or wherever at this time, is your student teaching experience. Having gone through that, having watched it through many years, and as assistant principal at Russell High School many years ago, this university played a great role in that school, and that school played a great role here in sending several student teachers. I was the one who acclimated all the student teachers, the one who led them around, showed them around, was kind of their sounding board and their touch base besides their supervising teacher in that building that semester. If there's a way for us to make student teaching experience more realistic, more applicable, perhaps even longer, who knows, and more broad, I think we'll broaden the base of training for those people who are coming to us from you. I have several ideas, and I'll be glad to share those sometime. Now's not the time necessarily, but I'd like to talk about that sometime. One of the most important things is, and if you get the gist of some of the things I'm trying to share with you this evening, trying to be frank and not brutally frank, like I said, is that we are ready, and I think that you are ready to adapt, to change, to improve. We need you more than we've ever needed a partnership for training young people to come to influence kids. We're held accountable in ways that we've never been held accountable before, and it's going to get tougher. It's going to get stronger. It's going to get more definitive, more focused. We need you to be able to adapt, to continue the excellent work, because if we can't change people, it's not going to be the excellent work we've been doing. We need to be able to work with you. We consider ourselves lifelong learners. I think that you do too. And like I said, we're ready for a partnership with higher education that will impact young people. That's our focus. You do have wonderful people here. My heart is here with you. I have ownership on this campus. You've got people scattered all over the world. I'm very privileged to be a part of a marvelous, wonderful, exciting club. The club is the graduates of Morehead State University. Wherever I go in the world, wherever I travel, when I find somebody who has gone to this university, we have an immediate bond, an immediate kinship. So you got them scattered all over the world. You got quality people, you got professional people. And it's a large club and getting larger. You have a marvelous responsibility in that way. We want to continue to be a part of this exciting quest you have and the success you have. Because like I said a while ago, if you look good, we look good, and vice versa. If we look good, you look good too. Now, I've talked longer than I intended to talk, and said more than I intended to say, perhaps. And I know that my speech-making skills aren't at the top of the thing. I'm still a little nervous about talking to you all. But I say to you that I appreciate you, appreciate the job you do and the service you have for this region. And most importantly, the impact you have on the people who are going to come and mold my kids. So I'm anxious to talk to you as individuals and field questions and so on like that, but my remarks are from the heart. And I love where you are. Thank you.
We're going to take 3 minutes. Now, the bathrooms are on both floors, and that might be very important here. They're on all 3 floors. But we're going to take 3 minutes just to stand up, stretch, or do whatever else you need to do. And then they will field questions that you may have. I know some of you have other schedules, but they will be here. So, that thing hits 1 minute past the 7. We're going to go.
What time is it?
It's getting late, isn't it?
Gosh, we ought to pay you. You all did a great job. You all made good presentations.
At any rate.
Wow. Very good.
I had to chunk some of that stuff out.
Nice job. All of you. They each had a very passionate.
That's right. And I wanted to ask you a question about your
Okay.
Need to answer. If someone else has said it, we'll go on to another question because we need to get as many questions as we can. Go ahead.
So my comments and my question is in relation to how we address diversity, both in the training of teachers and after teaching and students as well. This was triggered by the comment that was made in relation to having a 4-year internship, because I actually have 8 interns at the moment, so you know I have some insight into how that's working. Here's my thought about this, that I've been in the business of teaching for like about, well, an awful long time. And my sense over those years is that we have an enormous diversity in the classroom. We have an enormous diversity amongst the teaching population. And in terms of curriculum construction for a teacher education program, and indeed even in schools, we have never addressed that diversity in many respects, because we take everybody, the assumption being that everybody needs to know this stuff. We don't do an awful lot either in schools or in universities in terms of competency-based pre and post testing. So there's an interesting policy coming out of Britain that I don't actually like, but there is this notion of a fast track through the teaching profession, or even a fast track, I suppose you could have, through the university, because I don't like the idea that we construct a 4-year program on the assumption that everybody needs to do all of this stuff. I don't even like to see teachers teaching it in a classroom, that everybody needs to do the same stuff, because in actual fact, with my interns, for example, responding to your 4-year internship thing, I've got some top-notch interns who don't need, I don't think, an awful lot more internship, and I've got others that could probably do with 2 or 3 years more. But the question I ask them in that respect is, what do we do after 1 year when they're not doing well? So my question is, how would you address the issue of diversity, both in terms of the teacher education programme, teaching in the classroom, and what you do after teachers have qualified?
And if you don't have an opinion, you can say I don't have an opinion.
I'm trying to zero in on the multiple questions. The pre and the post test, that's one avenue, one piece only, a written piece. Other things would have to enter into to see at what point a person is, what progress they're making, and I think that's a good piece, but it's only one piece, you know, the pre and the post test. And as far as you were talking about the interns, and I am too, but as far as our students, I'm talking about our regular student body that we have in school. Yes, we need to be doing academic progress at every grade, in our elementaries, in our middle, and in our high school, to see where our students are. Not to digress, but this week we gave a test to all 8th graders for mathematics. And we had given a pre-test at the beginning of the year to see what class would be for high school credit in algebra. And this one young man had not gone into that particular class, and we had had another challenge class that if you did not make a certain score, you could be challenged to, and that class was available. And he wasn't either one of those, either the algebra or the challenge algebra. He was in the regular, but he did score a perfect on that algebra test. So I guess I'm saying, you know, that the test is one piece for interns, like it is for teachers. And you have a good point there. When I say 4 years or 3 years or whatever, we have to have at each end of each year some benchmarks there. Are we to it yet? What are we've observed in the classroom? What are instructional strategies like? How well are our students learning? How well am I working with overall school as a whole and whatever? So, you know, I get your point. We have to have these benchmarks at every year, and it's true. Had some wonderful, wonderful interns, and you know, some of them may be out of it in 2 years. Some may be out in 1. Some may not be out in 3 or 4. And at some point, we have to have a cutoff too, and you know, that would be to see what we are going to do in that case. I don't know if I've answered it too well, but.
Other questions? Yes.
I'm just curious what you think of the 5-year teacher education model in some schools and elsewhere.
One of the things that I was going to mention, and I know that U of L and UK, that theirs is a 5-year program now, but I also had read some information and met a couple of professors from University of Cincinnati with their 5-year program, and they've done pretty careful, I guess research, maybe it's too strong of a word, but they've done some careful monitoring of the program for success, and the students are much more actively involved. It's not such a student teaching type of situation, but it's much more active involvement by the teachers throughout that process. And I think for a lot of students that would be very beneficial for them. But again, you're going to come back to the pay. I mean, I'm going to go to school for 5 years and I'm not going to be making but this much money. You know, so it's going to be hard to convince students to enter in that if they don't see the benefit for it. You know, I think that it's going to be a hard job to sell like that, to require that.
And some of those schools, though, they do get a master's degree.
Yes.
So they would have a master's.
Cincinnati.
You know,
is 2
to
bachelors.
respond a little bit to that, and probably should have elaborated a while ago, I don't think that there's a checklist to say, these are the only things that make a good teacher, when I was talking about that a while ago. there's such a diversity in all of us, in our personalities, in our values, in the way we approach things and so on like that. I think the one underlying factor has to be they have to love this business. They have to love young people. I've got a teacher who retired who taught for so many years at Russell High School. I couldn't teach the way he taught. He addressed lots of different things in the classroom. I couldn't have him in the palm of my hand. I couldn't do it. But it was his way, and it worked. Within a week or two, well, really 3 days or so, they were all right in the palm of his hand. And he molded them all year long. The most organized, the most planned, the most detailed, most focused teacher I've ever seen in my life. His filing cabinets literally should have been textbooks, and he probably will someday. He took them all to Florida with him. But he growled. He talked about picking your nose. He talked about taking bubble gum out of the trash can that was used already, so he could take it home to his kids, so he wouldn't have to buy new. You could walk down the hall as you walk by the hall. If he was lecturing and he was all lecture, he'd stop and go gar gar gar, and just come right back to it and teach. He didn't lose them. I couldn't do that. I had to control them. So when I talk about weeding them out, I'm not saying they all have to be picture-perfect personalities. I'm saying that they have to love it and they have to want to be in it. And the other diversities are what make us a great profession. The other diversities, the other differences are what make all of us what we are. Your style and your way has to address those differences. And we have to have those different kind of teachers on our staffs. We have to have those different personalities. That's what makes it a marvelous profession, such a diversity with us. Look around the room here. You know most of y'all better than I do. What an amazing conglomerate of personalities and values and people. But you're here together doing a marvelous job at this university. So to address those things, there's got to be differences in people, and you've got to have different people and different foundations from those people.
But what about different courses? One model, therefore, does not fit all.
That's right.
A 5-year, 5th year, to obey, I think it's but surely the case is that there isn't one model that fits all, and we should be looking at a flexible model to address the diversity of students that come here and the diversity of teachers in the class.
And the diversity of needs that we have also. I agree with you. We have one pattern doesn't fit everybody.
I believe that Dr. Cody did say, and I think Dr. Davies also, that some school will have to step out and put other models forward. But I don't know if we can solve that in this setting. I think we can solve it in future settings, and to see if they truly are people of their word, that there is a flexibility in their mind that we don't have to all be standards boards driven. Other questions? Yes.
Having just completed a pilot study with technology and teachers in the schools in both of your all systems, involving some teachers in both of your all systems, do you believe that there may be teachers who would be willing in the future to do a partnership, say an hour a week or an hour every other week, with undergraduate students in the technology courses to develop multimedia that could be used in a real way in real classrooms?
If you're asking me if teachers would be willing to do that, I guarantee you we've got people who would absolutely jump at the chance to get involved and to expand their horizons so they can expand it to young people. Be no hesitation. Give of their own personal time, or even if stipend, they do whatever it took to make it work. Yes, I think so.
I think the key here to your question is that there are avenues within our College of Education that have these connections. People have good ideas. There are ways to try to see if those good ideas will fall on fertile ground within the public schools. And so we do have that mechanism, I think, within the College of Education that maybe all of us probably and we can make sure that occurs when we have the College of Education next time, maybe to explain some of those avenues. Yes, go ahead, Wayne.
Mr. Back talked about weeding them out earlier, and also a couple of you talked about getting more realistic field experiences earlier. One of the things that we run into, I'm Wayne Willis in the Department of Elementary Ed, and we find that with a lot of our students there's a very big difference in their level of commitment and maturity between when they're freshmen and not yet admitted to the teacher ed program and when they're juniors and have been admitted to the teacher ed program. And I certainly would like to give them a better field experience in their Foundations of Ed course, but some of them aren't very far along yet. And if I assign them to go help in your classroom, they may not show up. would the increasing, and that's one of the reasons we give them so little responsibility in that early time, just to observe, because we haven't screened them yet, because we would like for them to get a picture of what's going on. In your judgment, would it be worth the risk to increase the nature of their experience and make it more realistic at the possibility that they may not fulfill that responsibility?
The thing that I was sharing with you is what I was told for some recent graduates and people like that who are into our profession at this day and time, and they said, I wish I had known more about what it's like to control a whole classroom, or to face 24 faces at once, or a diversity of first, second, and third graders in the same room. I wish I had known more what it was like, so I would have paid more attention to the later classes. But again, the risk is what you said also. You're going to turn them off when they don't need to be turned off yet? They're just trying to find their way around and being
I'm
away
worried
from
about
home
turning you off.
I'm on about this business all the time. And I don't know that what I said is the answer. I got that feedback as something we need to address together if we can.
I think you're on target. I think the communication is a little different. In Wayne's situation, where they get the early experiences of observation, I think are very appropriate. In the last 2 semesters, I have surveyed the student teachers on things that they felt they needed improvement of the preparation. And the first time I surveyed them, they kept saying they wanted more field experience, more field experience. So the next time that I surveyed the group, I qualified that. Now here's what they really want. They want more whole class teaching. They want more teaching experience. They do not want to just observe. But I think that observation comes appropriate at the sophomore level, but when they get in these methods courses, they want to do something. And I think sometimes our methods courses vary depending on programs of study. I mean, there's a whole range. The primary does handle things much differently than the middle school, and the high school is totally different as well. But from the students, the feedback we have from the students, which I'll share with the group when we meet as a teacher education committee, the students are saying to us, we do not have enough actual interaction with students and live bodies and teaching experience, and that's what they're asking for. Your teachers are putting the form of observations and participation, but really the student is wanting to teach. And I have so many secondary folks who have a very difficult time because it is the first time in their entire college career that they have been in charge of an entire class. And the classroom management is another big issue that they identify. We do not have a classroom management course for secondary, and that is one area where your discipline is a major problem. So there are a lot of things that the students are saying that we have found in our surveys in the last 2 semesters that really support what you're sharing with us today. So I think these are things that we do need to look at in terms of...
Does anything keep us from taking potential teachers that maybe have not even been accepted into the program to get that experience of actually trying to teach in a general ed?
I don't think we have general ed. In fact, I think really not it depends on the program. Now, your primary teachers start in their courses very early, tutoring, small groups, and then the whole class. Middle school have a similar model, and I think in our secondary we have a field experience course, and it depends on who's teaching that course.
I guess
and
my
how much
point
experience
is
they
that
have.
if we truly believe in active learning and if we truly understand critical thinking skills, that basically allows for us to do a lot of things within our own curriculum that get students on their feet and taking responsibility. Monica, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Mr. Back, could you elaborate on some of the suggestions you have for improving the student teaching experience?
We got enough time?
If it's what, if you want to hear my thoughts, and I don't know, my thoughts are even more important than anybody else's. My thoughts are a conglomerate of things I've heard some of you all say through the years of experience and through the things I've heard other students and other people say. It seems to me, and I'll try to be very brief. It seems to me that we could improve our student teaching experience and the quality of those young people coming to us if we could make it a year-long experience. Go through the whole cycle. Now, when I say that, my thoughts, and again, let me qualify that way, my thoughts are take a student teaching semester is what, 15 hours credit? Take the last 15 hours credit they have to have. Some of your methodology courses, some of the reality courses they really have to touch with us. Take those 30 hours and combine them in a 1-year experience. Take 8, 10, 12 of them. Send them to my area. Let them find apartments. Instead of renting a dorm room here, let them find apartments there. Let them spend the whole year. Let Shirley Blair or Ronnie Back or somebody else be their coordinator. Teach them those 15 hours intermingled with go into their buildings. Matter of fact, you can put them in different buildings. You can put them in special ed, you can put them in elementary, you can put them in middle, and you can put them in high school. Outside their majors even a little bit to give them some perspective. You can spend that year letting them understand what it really is about. And by the time they're ready to enter their senior year and do that student teaching experience, it's time to get away from the GPA and credit focus and start understanding where you're headed and what you're really going to be doing. It's no longer a classroom game. No longer a classroom game. So maybe we can structure student teaching that will give them more of what we really need for them to have. And it can come credited through here and overseen from here and coordinated from here. I said, in my area alone, there are 6 public school districts within 15 minutes driving time of each other. Shucks, we could put 30 student teachers to work there if you had somebody there to coordinate them and be supervised from here. Give them a 1-year experience. Like I said, you don't have to send them to classroom every day. You don't have to teach them those 15 hours every day. You don't even have to take them a course at a time. Why can't we combine some of it? Now the key will be having the right people over them. Because if they're going to help mold 10, 12, 15 students into educators for lifelong learning and lifelong teachers, you've got to have the right person. You get the wrong person, you've done more damage than you can shake a stick at. And you've impaired more kids down through the years than you can imagine. But you got to have the right people. It's like the job that you all do. If you don't have the right personality and the right person, it doesn't matter anyway. It's not going to work. This profession is more and more that way. So I think that we could explore some ways to improve student teaching by expanding it and incorporating some other things into it to give it the real touch and the reality piece of it. Now, whether those things will work, can they be worked out? Logistics, do you take him away from this campus so he doesn't get as much income because it's important here?
We'll charge. We'll get tuition anyway.
Well, you know what I'm talking about. There are so many other factors that come into play in that puzzle that make a difference.
I got to tell you that I did that when I was a teacher. I trained in England in the early 60s and we got sent to hotels. We got sent to hotels for 6 weeks at a time. It was brilliant.
Well, when I did student teaching, we were on campus 4 weeks, out there 4 weeks, on campus 4 weeks, and gone 4 weeks. And I had a great experience, but I got into reality later on. I'm sorry, you.
At the university level, have not experienced that kind of supervision.
And that might be right.
And therefore, that would be an issue, I think, to some extent. I work in a block situation with 4 faculty, 3 other faculty and myself, and it has taken us 8 years to really get to learn to work together. And we've done it by trial and error, mostly error. But we've done it, and it's taken a certain personality. You're right. Not everyone is cut out to work like this. But it's something that teachers would need to learn how to do well.
Yes.
It's not something you just jump into.
No, it's not just easy to do. You're right.
In the MSU, I have an idea with regard to Wayne's issue. You know, we have dedicated MSU 101 classes right now. We have 3 or 4, Kathy, I don't know how many MSU 101 teacher ed classes. And their music has some, biology has some. But we do have some in our department. And some of the work for those who are going into student teaching, some of the whole group observing could be moved down to that level. And accompanied with observing in 207, Foundations of Ed. And that would provide an early taste.
And one of the problems you're going to have is logistics.
It's always
logistics. Either that or you're going to wear around county schools out.
We already have.
Yeah, you probably have. And you don't have much choice. And I don't know that obstacle can be overcome.
Yeah.
The 101 model, by the way, is not atypical. I have a little bit of expertise in that area. And there are many institutions that take that 1-hour course and blend it into an intro to X, Y, Z, and actually then make the laboratory, the 101, where you want the survival skills, etc., and active learning models that allow the students to get practice, and then they're gaining all the kind of the other sorts of knowledge, whatever the course is paired with it. And it's really not difficult to do, and it's not difficult to schedule, especially here when everything's on a computer and we can put freshmen in them right away. So it's a deal that could be done if we wanted to do it. Any other questions?
I just wanted to mention to the panel that there were several comments about basically professional development schools, and one of your comments, Ronnie, seemed very similar to what we're doing in professional development schools. Right now, we're working on one on the secondary level in Pike area, and I know there's an elementary one in Ashley and so on. And it fits in a lot with your concept of that one-year student teaching, where they would be doing their student teaching there perhaps for a year, but they're also getting trained in their methods courses, and they would be supervising and collaborating teachers from here as well as from the facility. The logistics, as you said, is an important thing on that, and getting kids, like you said, to come to Russell, let's say, and move there and stay there for a year. Same thing as it would be like in Pike or elsewhere. I think the logistics with us at the university could be worked out. Can we work out the individual logistics for the student?
Let me bring this to a close. First, let's thank our spirit of trying to have these you certainly have lent to this day. It's highlighted in my mind that we need more forums of bringing not only in the College of Education, but other people who hire our graduates, who deal with our graduates in, where we have an opportunity to hear what they have to say and interact with them. And I'm going to take that idea somewhere. I don't know where, but it will reappear at some point in time. The other thing I would say, just for the general attendance of those of you who took time to come, in the process, next Tuesday I'm going to Ashland, Inc., trying to seek $300,000 to be matched with $300,000 to put together an educational leadership forum that will encourage partnerships and encourage professorships to help look at these models and see if they do work. So I just want to let you all know that we're out trying to do that. Also, we are trying to get another $500,000 in quote-unquote educational leadership to be matched by $500,000, which would give us $1 million endowment that would allow us to do things in a more formal nature in terms of developing leadership from the in-service viewpoint to move towards administration or other leadership positions in education. I wanted this group to know that because we see this as very important. It really gets at the crux of what we are about as an institution. Thank each of you. Your testimonials make us feel good, but more importantly, I think the wisdom that you and the experience that you shared with us make us better. So thank you again. Thank all of you.
The last 2 years.
You know, buddy.